Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Daisy.
And I'm Ivy.
And today we're going to be watching more Game of Thrones, kind of. We're actually going to be watching the History and Lore, I think is what it's called. We didn't really know too much about what these videos, the History and Lore videos were about. I'd kind of seen a couple comments about them, but I wasn't really sure like where to find them or anything. And so when we finished watching season 1, we were super anxious to just start watching season 2, and we watched the first couple of episodes of season 2, and so those ones are in queue to be edited. But after we posted our the finale of season 1 last week, a lot of you were commenting about the History and Lore videos, and so we're like, maybe we should like take a pause and watch this, because if you've been watching our videos, you know that Ivy and I tend to get confused kind of easily with
both of us
with this show. And like, even though I saw it, I don't know, 10 years ago, a lifetime ago, whenever it was, I barely like understood what I was watching. And
it's difficult. It's hard to.
Yeah, if like people need to like watch additional content outside of the show to like understand context, I imagine I'm not the only one that ever struggled with it. At least that's what I want to tell myself. But anyway, so as we started watching season 2, of course, I found myself becoming very confused. And so I thought it might be a good idea to watch this video and see. I don't know that it'll help me at all with season 2, but at least it sounds like it might help put some things in context for season 1 that can then help me not continue to get more and more confused. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think, Ivy?
Yeah, no, I'm really I'm interested in seeing this, just because just noticing how much happened during each episode and everything, all the different stories, your comments talking about all the, you know, like the ins and outs of these different characters and families. I think this will be a little bit more like
enlightening.
Yes,
right. And also, I haven't read the books. I think it would be really cool to read the books.
Exactly. I haven't read the books either, so this is gonna be cool, I think, to really like get a better in-depth maybe stories. I honestly have no idea what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, history makes me think that we're gonna learn a bit about the history of the families, maybe. I don't know. So we'll see, but I'm excited. So yeah, I'm not really sure. This is gonna be like a different dynamic of like, I don't know, reacting from compared to our normal videos, because it's not like an actual episode of a show or a movie. And like, so I don't really know how this is gonna go. I think we may kind of just talk through it and see what we learn.
Let's see.
So let's just jump right in. And before we do, as always, I would just love to ask you if you can please subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. It really helps us out so much. We really appreciate all of you that have been supporting the channel, watching us, leaving us comments. It really, really means a lot to us. So thank you so much.
Yeah, really. Thank you guys. We love the comments. We love everything that, all the support that you guys are giving us. It's great.
Amazing. Love it. So, all right, let's jump right in.
Let's do it.
In the dawn age of Westeros, before the coming of man and the raising of castles and cities, there were only the children of the forest. Little is known of them now, but it is said they were small in stature, dark and beautiful, and no taller than children when grown to manhood. They lived in the depths of the forests and hidden villages, crannogs and caves. They hunted with weirwood bows and armed themselves with blades of obsidian. Their wise men were called green seers and were possessed of powerful magic. They worshipped nameless, faceless gods of the forest, stream and stone. According to legend, it was they who carved faces in the great white trunks of the majestic weirwoods. Their deep-cut eyes were red with sap and ever watchful. 12,000 years ago, the first men came from the eastern continent, crossing a land bridge called the Arm of Dawn. Riding their great horses and wielding weapons of bronze, they cut down the children's forests and weirwoods. A terrible war raged between the children and the first men.
Are these the White Walkers?
I don't know, maybe. Or the wildlings?
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of the captions are a little bit off. We just have the captions on. They're the auto-generated captions, because it says something about Dawn, but I think it's Dorne, because I feel like I remember hearing that name before, like as a place. But we'll have to see. Okay, this is interesting.
Lasted for centuries. At long last, the two races sought an end to the years of horror and bloodshed. They met on a small isle in the centre of a great lake called the God's Eye. It was there they forged the pact The first men would be granted dominion over the coastlands, the mountains, the high plains and the bogs, but the deep forest would forever belong to the children, and no weirwood tree would ever again fall to man's axe. To seal the pact before the gods, the children carved a face in every weirwood tree on the island, which came to be known as the Isle of Faces. But the pact could not withstand the coming of the Andal, a race of tall, fair-haired warriors. They attacked fire and weapons of steel.
I've heard the Andals before. Do you remember hearing that? I feel like I've heard
The
that somewhere.
Andals?
Yeah, I don't know where. But okay, so these were warriors, fair-haired warriors. Okay.
Slaughtering the children of the forest wherever they could find them, burning out their weirwood groves, hacking away at the faces of the old gods, and spreading their own religion through the land. Centuries of war followed, and the Andals conquered every kingdom in Westeros, save one, the North. The kings of winter were able to withstand the Andal invasion, and descendants of the first men dwell there to this day, and continue to worship the old gods.
Oh.
As for the children of the forest,
The new.
those who survived the slaughter were said to have fled far north and have not been seen again. Most assume they're long dead, and some don't believe they ever existed. They live on only through song and legend, and in the faces of the weirwood trees.
Oh, okay. So now we're starting a new story called The Age of Heroes.
Yes.
So
So
this is the story of like how I guess it's like their Adam and Eve story, it sounds
Right, yeah.
right? And how like the gods are created and the faces on the trees and also like the separation of like the North and everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
It comes from like the very beginning.
Interesting.
Okay, so this is called The Age of Heroes. I love how these are narrated by like Bran Stark. His voice so cute.
It is so cute. I love it.
All right, so The Age of Heroes. Let's see what this is about.
When Aegon the Conqueror invaded Westeros, he had 7 kingdoms to contend with. The Kingdom of the North, the Kingdom of the Mountain and the Vale, the Iron Islands, the Kingdom of the Rock, the Kingdom of the Reach, the Stormlands, and Dorne. These regions had been established by the first men thousands of years before, in the Age of Heroes.
7 gods?
What was that?
One hero
Like the 7 gods? I don't know.
Oh yeah, 7 is a number that they use a lot in
it
the before in the Age of the
hero of this fabled age was Bran the Builder. Bran raised the wall and built the stronghold of Winterfell, establishing House Stark and reigning as the first king in the north. Other legends tell of the Grey King in the Iron Islands. Grey King took a mermaid to wife and defeated Naga, the first sea dragon. House Greyjoy of Pike, the current rulers of the region, claimed to descend from him. House Casterly ruled the gold-rich Westerlands from their mighty seat of Casterly Rock, but their lands and power were swindled from them by the legendary trickster Lan the Clever. The noble house of Lannister
Lannisters?
is said to have descended from him.
Lan the Clever.
The verdant and fertile lands of the Reach were first ruled by House Gardener, whose founder, known as Garth Greenhand, wore a crown of flowers and vines. He ruled from Highgarden as the first king of the Reach and was said to have made the land bloom. Many noble houses trace their bloodlines back to him, including the current lords of Highgarden, House Tyrell. In the Stormlands, according to ballads of the age, a warrior named Durin fell in love with Elenai, whose father was god of the sea and mother was goddess of the wind. She gave her maidenhead to him, committing herself to a mortal life. Enraged, her parents called upon the winds and waters, destroying Darren's Bayside keep and wiping out his wedding guest. Darren declared war on the gods and rebuilt his keep, which was also destroyed. 4 more castles he raised, each stronger than the last. All fell to the power of the gods. But Darren's 7th castle, Storm's End, withstood the gods' rage. Darren became known as Darren Godsgrief and reigned as the first Storm King. There are countless other tales from the Age of Heroes, too many to count. These histories weren't recorded in a book, but passed down from generation to generation through story and song. And while some of them may be dismissed as fairy tales, every one of the 7 kingdoms is defined by them.
So these are stories that are passed down, kind of like fairy tales.
Yeah.
Interesting. Anything there that caught your attention, or
No, well,
it was a lot.
It was a lot, but it makes sense on how kind of like this. There's the separation of because these are like the myths, the gods stories, but it makes sense on how the story is currently now, like why they believe what they believe.
Right.
Like that.
Makes sense. Okay, so this next one is Valyria and the Dragons.
Ooh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
I want another story about this stuff.
By Viserys Targaryen. Oh, so we're going to hear him narrate. Let's see.
East of Westeros lies the smoking sea, where no ship dares sail. There are those who swear it to be demon-haunted, and who's to say they're wrong? For it was there, thousands of years ago, that a cataclysmic event occurred, destroying one of the great civilizations in history. The precise details of their origins are lost to us, but it is said the Valyrians were once a modest community of shepherds, tending their flocks on a small peninsula of the great eastern continent. One fateful day, in a volcanic area known as the 14 Fires, they made a shattering discovery: dragons. They were monstrous, scaled creatures with massive wings, sharp claws, and fiery breath. They were also said to have a deep-rooted connection to magic. In time, the Valyrians were able to tame the beasts.
Wow.
Harnessing their immense power, they established a city of wonder, unlike any before or since. They became skilled at sorcery and metallurgy, creating uncommon weapons of spell-forged steel. Wielding these weapons astride their dragons, the Valyrians conquered the
So Valyrian steel, because I hear people say, "Oh, it was made of Valyrian steel." That's probably what they're talking about.
Right.
That's where that steel came from.
Yeah,
from these
yeah.
practices.
surrounding lands and slowly expanded west. At the time, the Giscari Empire dominated much of the great eastern continent and tried to stop Valyria's expansion. The Giscari legions attacked the Valyrians 5 times, but could never defeat them. Finally, the Valyrians marched on their capital, Old Gis, and obliterated it, turning its streets and buildings to ash with dragon flame, and wiping the Giscari people and their culture off the face of the earth.
Wow.
The freehold of Valyria, as it came to be known, became the most advanced civilization in the known world, with its own language, gods, and culture. The Valyrians' reach extended far and wide, covering most of the continent. Great cities were built and roadways paved, all of which led back to Valyria. The freehold would prosper for nearly 5,000 years, but it was not to last. An event that became known only as the Doom laid waste to the Valyrians, their capital city, and its surrounding lands. The peninsula itself was shattered, becoming what is now the Smoking Sea. Every dragon was
But this was just like a natural storm that happened?
Well, they said it was something called the Doom, but I don't
Doom.
know if it was a natural storm.
Oh,
if
okay.
It came from somewhere else.
Oh,
but
interesting. Okay. And this is probably where they wiped out the dragons. Maybe, I don't know.
it sounds like it. I mean, at least it wiped out all of everything they had built, or a lot of what they had built.
Yeah.
was thought to be lost, as
Every
were the
dragon was thought
Valyrian
to be lost.
spells, knowledge, and recorded history. Thus, the mighty empire collapsed. What caused this cataclysm?
Right, what you're
There you go.
asking.
No one knows for certain.
Oh.
Some say it was a volcanic eruption. Others say the Valyrians' own sorcery got the better of them. In any event, the Doom's devastation of the Valyrian people was total, with the exception of a small rocky island in the narrow sea, Dragonstone. For it was there that the Targaryens, the last of old Valyria, dwelled. They would lie in wait for another 100 years before unleashing the fury of the dragon on another continent,
So these.
Westeros.
Oh, okay.
What?
So wait, so they still had a dragon after this? Because they said that it was thought that all the dragons were gone after that
Doom.
whole situation. Yeah, but then they said that they would wait in that what was left in Dragonstone until they could
Yes.
unleash the
Yep.
dragon
Yep.
in Westeros.
Yes.
So they still had some dragons left.
Right. And maybe that's how they had those eggs still.
Although this
Or
is
no?
when apparently but this is, I guess, when apparently they were just about to, because it says like they were going to unleash dragon to Westeros.
Oh,
So like
okay.
conquer or whatever Westeros.
Yes.
And then they must have ruled in Westeros, who knows for how long, and then
Got it.
those eggs still remained or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like you're moving on to another part of this world, the
Oh.
history of the Night's Watch, by Lord Commander Jorah Mormont. Isn't that the guy that's always with Daenerys? Is that him?
Oh, is it?
Isn't his name? Or no, Mormont is the
Oh,
other
is it?
guy, because they have the same name. Okay, and I think they're part of the same like
Okay.
blood or something lineage. Okay, I don't remember what they are, but okay, so Lord Commander Mormont is going to tell us the history of the Night's Watch.
Night gathers, and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns, and win no glory. I shall live and die at my post. I am the sword in the darkness.
That's like their vows,
I am
kind
the
of, right?
watcher on the walls.
Wait, the what?
The vows like that they
I am
take.
the shield
Yeah.
that
Yep.
guards the realms of men. I pledge my life and
Yeah.
honor to the Night's Watch for this night and all the nights to come. Legend tells of a winter that lasted a generation and of a vast and terrible darkness that fell across the land. It came to be known as the Long Night. In the midst of this darkness, the White Walkers emerged from the far north with their armies of the dead. They waged war against the living, laying waste to villages and holdfasts, leaving terror and destruction in their wake. After years of brutal conflict and unbearable loss, an alliance of the first men and the children of the forest managed to drive the walkers and their minions back into the frigid northern wastelands from whence they came.
So I was wrong.
To prevent...
I was wrong about the children of the forest and the White Walker. There's two separate things.
Yes. Okay. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So First Men, Children of the Forest, they actually came together and defeated the White Walkers.
Yes.
If you guys see me looking down, it's because I'm jotting things down, because otherwise I'm just going to be watching here and not picking up on names. And all these
and I'm just peeking at her notes.
This is like a class, like a history class in school.
Yeah.
It's like so much information.
It is a lot.
Okay, so...
It's interesting.
And another invasion, the first men erected the wall, a massive fortification, 700 feet in height, stretching from the Frostfang Mountains in the west to the Bay of Seals in the east. It was a structure unlike any ever built. Indeed, some maintain it could only have been completed with the aid of giants or using the powerful magic of the ancient children of the forest.
It's enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Men were required to guard and maintain it, and thus the Night's Watch was born, a sworn brotherhood tasked with defending the realms of men against the dark forces that lay beyond. Upon taking his vows, a brother of the Night's Watch serves for life. It is a life of hardship and great sacrifice, so the oath must not be taken lightly.
Yep.
The punishment for desertion is death.
Mm-hmm.
The Night's Watch is divided into 3 vital branches.
Oh.
The Rangers, the Builders, and the Stewards. While all Black Brothers are expected to take up steel should the need arise, the Rangers are the true warriors of the Watch. Centuries come and gone, and although the White Walkers have yet to return, another threat has emerged. Barbarian tribes known as Wildlings.
Oh, those are the
The
wild.
Rangers are charged with defending the realm against these lawless savages.
Oh my gosh.
The Builders are carpenters, masons, miners, and woodsmen, tasked with maintaining the wall as well as its various keeps, towers, and structures, which have fallen into disrepair over the years. The Stewards serve as cooks, butchers, and hunters. They tend to the horses and messenger ravens, sew clothing, gather firewood, and bring supplies up from the south. The Night's Watch is a diverse group. Proud volunteers from noble houses stand side by side with petty thieves conscripted from dungeons. Class distinctions are left behind, as are past misdeeds. A man gets what he earns on the wall, and even the lowliest gutter snipe can rise up in rank if he proves himself worthy. For thousands of years, the brothers of the Night's Watch have stood their lonely vigil as the seasons changed, as brutal wars raged in the south, as dynasties rose and fell. The Night's Watch endured. We are the swords in the darkness. We are the watchers on the wall. We are the shields that guard the realms of men.
Okay, that was so interesting because as I was watching that, or just kind of as I've been watching this so far, I've been thinking like, I wonder if it would be helpful. Because so far, it's not necessarily giving, I mean, we're not even like close to being done this, but so far I feel like it's not necessarily giving like spoilers for what we saw in season 1.
Yeah.
And so part of me is like, I wonder if it's helpful to watch these before the season. But I also think that having seen what we saw, like everything's just clicking.
Yeah.
And I think that
I agree. I
right?
think we're grabbing more, like we're understanding things more, seeing it after, kind of putting the pieces together.
Yes.
I think if we see this in the beginning, I would have been like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Going on?
Because it feels like a lot of information right now.
Yeah, it does.
And like, I can't imagine like, seeing this before. It would be, overwhelming. But it's interesting because I remember like hearing as I was watching the people, like all the men in the Night's Watch, talking about like the Rangers, Builders, and the Stewards, but I didn't realize like how it was like so structured and like there was organization to it. So that's kind of neat. Yeah. And the other thing I think is interesting, like hearing this, is understanding like how like why they decided to build this wall, like what led them to that, and then also to think about how despite there being so much time that has passed since like the whole thing happened that led them to build the wall, that they're still so like devoted and loyal and take this so seriously and kind of haven't, kind of slacked with.
Exactly. Because
like,
they could have just said, well, nothing's really happened. Everything's fine.
There's a one-time thing or
Yeah.
whatever. Like, I
Right.
don't know. And I think it's really admirable that they are, they continue to take it seriously and are prepared for whatever can happen. I think that's great.
It's a difficult place to be. And
Yes.
I just think of I'm just thinking of like Sam and like these characters that are there that I feel they seem like, we're like the bastards of the family. Yet they're the ones that are kind of protecting everybody, the men of the realm. Like,
yeah. I mean, like they said, there's people
such a big
from
part.
honorable houses that come together with petty thieves and all come together and are equal, working towards like this one mission. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, totally.
All right, let's see what the next one is. The History of the Night's Watch. Wait, what did we just watch?
I thought that's what it was. The Tale? No.
Okay, so this one's The History of the Night's Watch by Maester Lewin, I think is how you pronounce it. Maester is one of those guys that would wear the...
Oh, yes. Remember? The old man.
Yes, there were like several of them in different places. There was one in Winterfell. There was one in capital places. Okay.
Joining the Night's Watch, or taking the Black, is a singular honour for any northerner, for it was in the north, some 8,000 years ago, that the first man drove back the White Walkers, erected the wall, and established the sworn brotherhood that would guard the realm and its people from the dangers beyond. Regrettably, the Night's Watch no longer commands the widespread respect and admiration it once did. While House Stark and other houses in the northern regions continue to recognise its vital importance to the safety and stability of the realm, this view is not shared by the powerful houses of the southern kingdoms.
That's true. Like sometimes when you would hear about it, people in the King's Landing talking about the Night's Watch, it didn't sound like an honorable thing.
Exactly.
It's like, well, if you're lucky, somebody will save your life and send you to spend the rest of your days in the Night's Watch.
Right.
Like it kind of would be like the next best thing to death.
Yeah.
Like it just seemed very respected.
Or their subjects. Most regard the Watch as a misguided, obsolete order made up of useless outcasts. Admittedly, the current Night's Watch is a shadow of its former glory. Their numbers have dwindled to less than 1,000. Of the 19 castles along the wall, only 3 are functional: the Shadow Tower, Castle Black, and East Watch by the Sea. And the Watch's mandate of adding to the wall has been abandoned entirely. There are barely enough resources to maintain it. Recruiting officers, known as Wandering Crows, scour the dungeons and slums of the realm in hope of finding men to fill the ranks. While there is still the occasional highborn volunteer, the newest recruits are almost entirely made up of lowly criminals. Thieves, rapists, and murderers, sentenced to the wall as punishment for their crimes. The decline of this once fabled order is troubling, as the danger it guards against is all too real. While the White Walkers haven't been seen or heard from in ages, and may very well be the stuff of myth, barbarian tribes that dwell beyond the wall, known as wildlings, have been a menace to the North and its people for generations.
So they're still there.
Mm-hmm. At certain points in history, the disparate wildling tribes have united behind a single leader, a king beyond the wall, and attempted large-scale attacks against the realm. But thanks to the resourceful and courageous men of the Night's Watch, these so-called kings were soundly defeated. While many have lost faith in the Night's Watch, the people of the North are steadfast in their belief that the Black Brothers will answer the call of duty. But with winter coming, diminished numbers, and a lack of widespread support, will they be ready?
Okay, so that's kind of like what I was talking about, that like they continue to like respectfully do their duty at the wall, but and then I was saying like it's surprising that after all this time they still do it, but yeah, it makes sense that in the North it's more respected than in the South because they were more like close to what happened, and
right
it affected them more like closely, and their like ancestors and their families and whatever, and so it makes sense. But I mean, if they say winter is coming, gotta be ready, right?
Ready. And it's interesting that the wall was way more active before, right?
Yeah.
They had all these castles, and now it's just kind of like whatever they can get, the scraps.
Yeah.
The criminals is what they get to kind of protect them, or protect whatever the...
Yeah, and so they have the 3 castles: Shadow Tower, I think they said, Castle Black, which is where I think they all are most of the time, or all the time.
Okay.
And then Eastwatch by the Sea was the other one. Like, so it's one on the one edge, one on the other edge, and then the one in the middle.
Okay.
Castle Black
Right.
is what I understood.
Hmm.
Okay, so next story. What? Another version? The History of the Night's Watch by Tywin Lannister. So that's the father
Right.
of Lannisters, right?
Long ago in the wintry north, an army of demons emerged from beneath the icy ground and spread darkness and despair across the land. Astride their monstrous spiders, flanked by giants, they wreaked havoc on the innocent, slaughtering thousands. All hope was lost until the fearless warriors of the First Night's Watch drove them back into the wintry mountains and built a magic wall to keep them from ever invading again. These stalwart brothers in black continue to protect us, even to this day, from the evils that lurk in the shadows. An absurd lie, a fairy tale, spun by many a wet nurse in the north, to be sure.
Okay, so this is the other perspective, right?
Yeah.
From the South,
Yeah,
where they're a little
exactly.
bit more like cynical about it.
Right. And they don't believe any of it.
Yeah.
A giant wall does exist. A triumph of engineering, perhaps, but not of magic. As for the Night's Watch, there may have been a time centuries ago when there was prestige and honor in the miserable monastic life of a Black Brother. But now, the wall has become a glorified penal colony, full of outcasts, criminals, and assorted ne'er-do-wells. Today, a typical man of the Night's Watch most likely started out a lowly beggar, or a rapist, or a village idiot. As for the few pioneer watchmen, they either fought on the losing side of a war, or were disowned by their parents for one reason or another. Those who persist in defending the Night's Watch will claim the Seven Kingdoms need protection from the wildling tribes of the far north. But there's little to fear from those primitives. They're a nuisance, but not sophisticated or powerful enough to be a significant threat to the realm. And any talk of White Walkers returning with their armies of the dead and their giant spiders and their snarks is just that, talk.
Okay.
All right, so let's learn about the old gods and the new by Bran Stark and Catelyn Tully. And his mom.
In the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros, the dominant religion is the faith of the Seven, first brought to its shores by the Andals some 6,000 years ago.
But there are some who still keep to the old way, worshipping the faceless gods of the children of the forest and the first men. The old gods are countless, nameless spirits of nature. In ancient times, the children of the forest carved faces in the trunks of the weirwood trees, which became sacred symbols of their faith. In time, the first men adopted the children's gods as their own. Most castles at that time contained a godswood with a weirwood or heart tree at its centre.
Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, a new religion was born in the hills of Andalos. According to legend, the god of seven revealed itself to the Andals, and the invasion of Westeros followed soon after. The Andals sailed across the sea on ships armed with weapons of steel. Some warriors carved a seven-pointed star into their skin as a symbol of their new faith.
The invaders destroyed most of the weirwoods in the southern lands, slaughtered the children of the forest wherever they could find them, and conquered every kingdom of the first men, save the north. In time, the faith of the seven spread like wildfire throughout the land. The seven is a single deity with seven aspects, each symbolising a different area of life, though most people refer to the seven as separate gods.
The mother is prayed to for mercy.
Oh, so they're actual gods, like these seven gods. I thought it was just like an expression,
Oh.
like not literal.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so there's the seven gods. There's the mother is prayed to for mercy.
And watches over fertility, childbirth, and peace. The father sits in judgment over souls. The warrior is prayed to for protection, valor, and skill in battle. The crone is the symbol of wisdom and foresight. The smith watches over creation and craftsmanship. The maiden symbolizes purity, love, and beauty. Finally, there is the stranger, rarely prayed to, who represents death. The faith is highly organized and deeply influential in Westerosi politics and culture as the official religion of the monarchy. Worshippers gather in temples of the faith called septs. The seat of the faith is the great sept of Baelor, which is located in the capital city of
King's Landing. So that is where Ned was executed.
Yeah.
The sept of Baelor. But the septs are places where, I guess they're like places of worship, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like. Okay.
Yep.
I wonder if this, maybe they'll explain in a second, maybe, but if that's related to, because I remember they would talk about that, the woman that used to like be with Sansa all the time and kind of like take care of her.
Oh,
a septa or something
Yeah.
like that. I wonder if that's like kind of like a nun. Sort of, because she would wear like the head covering,
right.
And it sounds like the same, like the septs. And
King's Landing.
Still, in the north, where descendants of the first men dwell, worship of the old gods continues to this day, in the sacred faces of the weirwood trees, close watch over the faithful.
Okay, old gods in the north, is that what they said?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the ones that they worship in the south are the new gods. The ones that worship in the north are the old gods?
Yes.
And those are the ones, yes?
But does that mean the 7 gods that they described
are the ones they worship in the south, I think?
Oh, okay.
Because I always associate the north with
the
like tree thing and like gods of nature, I think they said, or something like that. And they're countless and blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
And then in the south,
it's the 77.
It's the
which makes sense. Now, actually, the first episode in season 2 makes sense.
What part?
Where they were in the south. They were by the ocean, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they were burning the 7 gods, and the guy there was like freaking out. Why are you guys doing this? Why are you letting them, burn?
I think I need to rewatch it now.
Yeah. But okay, that makes sense.
Cool.
And that's why they in the north, like Ned and all of them, usually were by that pond, by the tree.
Where those trees, and also Robb Stark took his vows by a tree that looked like that.
Yep.
And because they were like, and they said, like, if any of you want to take your vows by this tree, probably like depending on their religious beliefs. And so they're like the minority, I think, because only a couple of them did that. And I guess the rest of them didn't.
Yep.
Because they don't follow those beliefs.
Right.
It's all coming together.
Cool.
Okay. The Field of Fire by Robb Stark.
Oh,
Field of Fire. Did you ever hear somebody say the Field of Fire?
Field of Fire. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, the Field of Fire. Let's see what this is.
The ascension of Aegon Targaryen was confirmed, and the fate of the 7 kingdoms sealed on the Field of Fire. Kings Loren Lannister of the Rock and Mern Gardner of the Reach stood against Aegon's invasion. They commanded a united force of 600 banners, 5,000 mounted knights, and 50,000 men-at-arms. Aegon's host was vastly outnumbered, and when the army of the 2 kings charged, the invaders turned heel and ran. But Andal Might was no match for Dragonflame. When Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons, 4,000 souls were horrendously burned alive on the battlefield. King Mern among them. Realizing all hope was lost, King Loren surrendered. The Starks of Winterfell had no intention of submitting to Targaryen rule. They had reigned as kings in the north since the days of the First Men and were determined to resist the Targaryen invaders, just as they had resisted the Andals thousands of...
Sorry, so, because I know that they mentioned, like, the king of, like, all the king of here, king of there, like, all the different places. And so, what was what happening here, that this guy, Aegon, invaded Westeros with dragons.
Yeah.
And then, at that point, all the other kings basically submitted to this one guy. Is that what happened?
I don't know. But
yes,
that sounds yeah.
I mean, it's
making sense.
If that's what happened, it seems like it makes sense. But then, because then they're saying like everyone, I mean, they had no choice but to surrender, except for the people from Winterfell,
right?
Because they had been ruling there forever and were resisting. Okay, let's keep watching.
Of years before, King Torrhen Stark led his army to the Red Fork just east of Riverrun, hoping to succeed where Lorne and Mern had failed. But when Torrhen saw the size of Aegon's now mighty host, along with his monstrous dragon, he knew he couldn't subject his followers to the horror of the Field of Fire. He bent the knee and swore fealty to Aegon, who allowed the Starks to maintain their lordship over the region as Lords Paramount and Wardens of the North. Without question, Torrhen Stark saved thousands of lives that day. He was ever after known as the King Who Knelt.
The King Who Knelt.
Oh.
That's a weird legacy to have, right?
Wow,
like even though he
that's
saved the
deep.
lives of a lot
Yeah.
of men, but that seems like a very northern way of thinking, though, because they're like
Yeah.
seem to be very prideful.
Right.
The king who knelt. Okay.
Wow.
So that was the Field of Fire version
Oh,
1.
yes.
Now we're going to hear, I guess, maybe like another perspective
Yeah.
of this story.
The
Field of
Targaryen
Fire.
perspective.
Or the Viserys Targaryen.
The days of the Andals were numbered. One by one, their so-called kings were bending the knee or facing the wrath of Aegon Targaryen. Aegon of old Valyria. Aegon who was blood of the dragon. After defeating the Iron Men at Harrenhal and slaying the last of the Storm Kings, Aegon and his sisters, Rhaenys and Visenya, set their sights on other prizes. The gold mines of the Rock and the fertile lands of the Reach. King Loren Lannister of the Rock and King Mern Gardener of the Reach foolishly thought their combined armies could beat back the Targaryen host. They rode forth together, their proud banners flapping in the wind, and faced off against Aegon in a vast golden field of wheat. The two kings commanded a massive force of nearly 60,000, and it appeared the day was there, until Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons for the first and only time. Each beast was named after the Valyrian gods of Aegon's forefather. Visenya rode Vhagar, whose fiery breath could melt armor. Rhaenys rode Meraxi, whose jaws were big enough to swallow a horse whole. Greatest of all was Balerion the Black Dread, with fire dark as night and wings so huge whole towns were covered in shadow when he flew overhead.
Oh my gosh.
This magnificent creature was ridden by Aegon himself. 4,000 men were bathed in glorious dragon flame that day, on what came to be known as the Field of Fire.
Oh, right.
King Mern was among the dead, and House Gardener died with him. His stewards, the Tyrells, surrendered his ancestral stronghold of Highgarden to Aegon, and were appointed Lords Paramount of the Reach and Wardens of the South. When Loren Lannister witnessed Mern's fate, he wisely bent the knee. Aegon spared Loren's life, and the Lannisters were made Lords Paramount of the Westerlands and Wardens of the West. After his triumph on the Field of Fire, Aegon's conquest was assured. In a short time, the so-called 7 kingdoms were melted down in the heat of the dragon's flame and transformed into a single realm. Aegon would forever be known as Aegon the Conqueror.
I think it's interesting, these different perspectives, because like we hear the first version of the story and it's like, oh, dragons and those people bad.
Yeah.
And then we hear this one and they're like, they had no choice but to bend the knee. Blah,
Right.
blah, blah.
Yeah.
What else were they going to do? So we gave them a little like title.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting to hear like the different perspectives.
Yeah. It's cool. I like that.
Okay, so this one's the Order of the Maesters by Maesters.
Maesters? I think it's Maesters.
By Maester Lewin. So this is what the people that have the necklacey things
with the
and
chains.
with the chains
Yeah.
and that are like incredibly wise.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what that's about.
In the far southwest of Westeros, at the mouth of the river Honeywine, lies the great stone city of Old Town. It is home to the Citadel, where men and boys from throughout the kingdoms come to receive their training as maesters. Maesters play an integral role in Westerosi society, serving as scholars, healers, and advisors to the nobility of the 7 kingdoms. This venerable order of learned men dedicate their lives to serving the realm and are sworn to occupy a neutral position when it comes to power and politics. Upon completing his training at the Citadel and taking his vows, a maester renounces his family name and takes a vow of celibacy. He is assigned to a castle or keep and duty-bound to serve as its counselor and healer. Even if control of the castle changes hands, a maester's allegiance is to the realm, not to any one family. His badge of office is a great chain, forged from links of different metals which he wears around his neck. It is a reminder of his role as a servant of the realm and is never to be removed. A maester forges his chain with study, and each link represents the mastery of a different kind of learning.
Oh, how interesting.
For instance, a silver link signifies mastery of the medicinal arts. A golden link represents the study of money and accounting. An iron link indicates knowledge of warcraft. Ravenry is an especially important skill for a maester, as it is he who breeds, trains, and maintains carrier ravens for the delivering of messages throughout.
Right, so they're always the one that come and say, oh, there's a raven.
Yeah.
But that's interesting how each link in those chains has like a specific meaning. So I guess like the heavier that chain is, the like more knowledge they
Right.
in theory have.
Ooh, I'm gonna look into that now.
Yeah. How interesting.
About the land, there are some maesters who have earned a link forged of Valyrian steel. This signifies knowledge of the higher mysteries, commonly known as magic. Only one maester in 100 possesses such a link, as this field of study is frowned upon by many in the Order.
Oh.
It is possible magic may have existed for a time long ago, but most consider the higher mysteries to be long gone from this world.
Doesn't the one from King's Landing, doesn't he have one of those?
Oh, does he?
I think so, because he had all that magic stuff laying around. I don't know if you remember.
In what scene?
When Ned was asking him all these questions about what had happened to the hand before.
Previous one?
Previous hand.
I mean, he did have a lot of things, but I don't know if that's like part of his day actual job or if
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
Because they're also like healers and things like that. But I may be wrong. I have no idea. I feel like now I need to rewatch this entire season 1 for the third time.
I know.
Oh my
Really?
gosh.
It really does.
Okay, let's continue.
Service as a maester is a noble calling, one of vital importance to a prosperous realm. It is little wonder there are some who refer to the Order as the Knights of the Mind.
Mad King Aerys.
Oh, yes, okay.
Want to hear about
As
the Mad
word of
King?
Aerys' erratic
100%.
and troubling behavior spread throughout the Seven Kingdoms, Lord Rickard Stark continued to serve his king faithfully as Warden of the North. The proud father of 4 children, his daughter Lyanna was engaged to Robert Baratheon,
The king.
Yes.
Anyway.
And wasn't she the sister of
Ned.
So this guy that they're talking about, Rickard Stark, was Ned's father.
Yeah.
Who they said was very loyal to the king, like the Mad King.
The Mad King, yeah.
Okay.
the young lord of Storm's End. Centuries of peace between the North and the Iron Throne ended the day Rhaegar Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, abducted Lyanna. Enraged, Brandon Stark rode to King's Landing, demanding the release of his sister and the death of Rhaegar. Aerys arrested him for treason and called his father to come to the capital to ransom him. When Lord Rickard complied, Aerys, now utterly mad, arrested him for treason as well. Lord Rickard demanded a trial by combat. Aerys declared fire the champion of House Targaryen and had Lord Rickard suspended from the rafters of the throne room while pyromancers lit a blaze beneath him. As he burned, Brandon was brought into the throne room. A leather cord attached to a strangulation device was wrapped around his neck. Aerys told Brandon his father was a dead man, but there was a chance to save him. A longsword was placed on the floor just out of Brandon's reach, and the more he struggled to reach it, the more the cord tightened around his throat. Brandon Stark strangled himself, trying to free his father, who was roasted alive in his own armor. The entire court stood and watched this atrocity take place. Sir Jaime Lannister and the Kingsguard among them. The Mad King was reported to have laughed hysterically as these 2 noble men were tortured and brutally killed before him.
Sorry, I think this is a story that they tell early in the season, and that you and I were like, wait, I'm not following.
Yeah.
I think it's like coming together, right? That's okay.
Okay, now that we see, I know they're just these little characters, but
And like the drawings.
it really helps to put in perspective what happened in that story, because trying to analyze what they had said was kind of...
It was hard to follow.
And
this at least gives us like the visuals that make it like a little bit easier to like, okay, put 2 and 2 together.
Okay. And so, did they say what happened to the sister?
No,
they haven't said it. Okay.
No.
Not yet. I know she passed.
At that point she was kidnapped.
She was kidnapped, but not yet.
Killed before him. Seeking to rid the world of all his supposed enemies, Aerys called for the head of Rickard's younger son, Eddard Stark, and Lyanna's betrothed, Robert Baratheon. He sent word to Lord Jon Arryn, who had fostered both young men at the Eyrie, to apprehend them.
Jon Arryn, isn't that the old hand of the king?
Yes. No, Arryn.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The one that died in the very beginning. So
Yes.
Jon Arryn had fostered both young men. And so the king sent Jon Arryn to apprehend them. So to like, I guess like arrest them.
Yeah,
sort of.
right.
Why?
Yeah.
Instead, Lord Arryn joined houses Stark and Baratheon in rebellion.
Okay, so much. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Jon Arryn was sent to like bring back Ned.
Yes.
and I guess Robert.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of doing that, Jon Arryn joined forces with them.
Okay.
So this is because you always hear Robert talking to Ned. Well, when he was alive, when they were alive,
Yeah.
talking to Ned about like, oh, when like we came together and we fought this and
Yeah.
and so this is probably like the beginning of that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Of them like fighting together or something.
Right.
Robert
and
vowed
rebellion.
to kill Rhaegar Targaryen and get his beloved Lyanna back.
Right.
Okay.
That one was really helpful.
Yeah, super helpful.
Wow. Okay. Oh, so now we're going to hear about him from Robert Baratheon, who has motivation because he is in love with
Lyanna.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Aerys Targaryen was the last of his name to sit on the Iron Throne, known far and wide as the Mad King. His was a reign of instability and terror. The Seven Kingdoms are well rid of him and his kind. Oh, he may have appeared to be a capable ruler at first, but that was due in no small part to his counselors, led by the hand of the king, Tywin Lannister. There may have been years of peace and prosperity during Aerys's reign, but it was Tywin who was really running the country, as Aerys spiraled further and further into insanity.
So the father of the
Jaime and
Cersei and Tyrion
was the hand
of the Mad King.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
The dragon spawn were famous for losing their minds. It was the price they paid for centuries of keeping the bloodlines pure. And Aerys more than happily continued the noble sister-fucking tradition of his forefathers. As the years passed, Aerys's behavior became increasingly erratic. He cut himself so often on his Iron Throne, many referred to him as King Scab, though never to his face. It was rumored he had developed an obsession with wildfire and was known to inflict horrific punishments on those he considered enemies, including burning them alive.
Wow.
As his paranoia and bloodlust grew, he had a bitter falling out with Lord Tywin, who had served the crown faithfully for 20 years. At least Tywin was able to leave the job with his life and fortunes intact. Subsequent hands of King Aerys weren't so fortunate. Then the Targaryens went too far. The Crown Prince Rhaegar abducted Lyanna Stark, daughter of Rickard Stark, the Lord of Winterfell. She was my betrothed. She was my beloved. Beautiful and spirited woman, and I loved her more than life itself. Rhaegar went south with Lyanna, hiding her away in Dorne. What harm he inflicted on the poor girl, the gods only know. Brandon Stark, Lyanna's eldest brother, was outraged. He rode to King's Landing to confront the king and demand his sister's safe return. Instead, Aerys had him executed. His father, Rickard Stark, as well. There wasn't much left to discuss after that. Aerys feared their loved ones would seek revenge for what he did. He was right to be afraid. Aerys wasted no time in calling for the heads of Brandon's younger brother, my friend Eddard Stark. And my head too, of course. I'm sorry he didn't come looking for it himself. Alongside Jon Arryn of the Vale, the man who fostered Ned and I as children, Baratheons, Starks, and Tullys all called their banners. Once our rebellion began, the Mad King's days were numbered.
Okay.
Oh, so Mad King Aerys by Tywin Lannister.
Okay.
That'll be interesting, because he was also his hand.
Yes.
And then had a falling out.
Right.
As Aerys Targaryen's behavior grew more and more erratic, the task of ruling the Seven Kingdoms fell to me, Tywin Lannister. I had served Aerys for nearly 20 years, and as a result, the realm had prospered. The royal coffers were full, the land was at peace. But Aerys grew increasingly hostile, jealous of the success many credited to me. My power and influence unnerved. The captain of my personal guard, Sir Elyn Payne, was once overheard making offhand comments regarding who was the true ruler of Westeros. When the king was given this information, he had Elyn Payne's tongue ripped out with hot pincers. It was my desire to unite the houses of Lannister and Targaryen through marriage. My daughter Cersei would marry Aerys' eldest son, Prince Rhaegar. Such a union made perfect sense for all parties. However, Aerys' senses had begun to leave him quite some time earlier. Instead of uniting the royal family with its most loyal and powerful ally, Aerys chose instead to insult my family, indicating that such a match was beneath Rhaegar. Instead, he chose Elia Martell of Dawn to be Rhaegar's wife, as if to rub salt in my wounds. Aerys appointed Jaime, my son, to the King's Guard. The King's Guard may be an honor for lesser families than ours, but it is a lifetime appointment that forces him to renounce all family holdings. This creates a difficulty in naming an heir to Casterly Rock, but Aerys knew all that. I had grown tired of the King's constant provocation. Thus, I resigned my post as Aerys' hand and returned to Casterly Rock with my considerable forces. When Robert Baratheon rebelled against the throne, Aerys grew fearful that I would join with Robert's forces and rise against him. He thought himself clever and kept Jaime very close, as if warning me. He sunk deeper and deeper into delusion, paranoia, and violence. I've heard it said he became obsessed with wildfire, a substance which, once lit, cannot be extinguished. Convinced he had enemies all around him, he wouldn't allow blades in his presence, save for those of his King's Guard. Alas, that proved to be his undoing.
So Jaime had the only blade.
Because it was supposed to protect him.
Right.
Interesting.
Ooh.
But so that also makes sense, though, why Jaime would have anything against him because of like all the slights and issues and fallout he had with the king, that Mad King had with Jaime's father.
Right.
I didn't realize that the King's Guard, they have to renounce all family holdings.
I didn't
and
know
it was
that
like
either.
So I don't know if they mentioned that at any point, but that is really interesting context to have because. And also to know that it's like it's a respected position, but like you said, not for certain
lesser,
people. Yeah, for certain families.
And I'm starting to see Joffrey and all of this like a mad king.
I know,
like he's a mad king, cutting people's tongues and doing all this crazy stuff.
Yeah,
just being so unpredictable. But I mean, Joffrey's just a brat. He's just a kid, doesn't know what he's doing.
Exactly. But
we don't like him.
We don't like him.
But okay, this is super interesting.
All right, so let's see. House Targaryen by Viserys Targaryen.
Okay.
The Targaryen dynasty united the Seven Kingdoms and lasted nearly 3 centuries. It was a dynasty forged in fire, sealed in blood, and destroyed by rebellion. The Targaryens are blood of the dragon, descended from the nobility of ancient Valyria, a once mighty empire in the east. When the cataclysmic doom laid waste to Valyria and its people, the Targaryens survived, having settled on the island fortress of Dragonstone years before. They remained there for a century, until the rise of Aegon the Conqueror. Instead of attempting to reclaim the eastern lands of his ancestors, Aegon sailed west for the Seven Kingdoms. His sisters Visenya and Rhaenys at his side. To keep the bloodlines pure, Aegon continued the custom of his Valyrian ancestors and took both of his sisters to wife. Together, they came ashore on the eastern coast of Westeros. Their blazon, a dragon with 3 heads, representing Aegon and his sister wives. Their words, fire and blood. While their host was small in comparison to the armies of Westeros that awaited them, Aegon and his sisters had a secret weapon, the last of the dragons. He conquered every kingdom save Dorne, which eventually bowed to Targaryen rule a century later. He had the swords of his enemies melted down by the fiery breath of his dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, and forged into the Iron Throne. The capital city of King's Landing was built on the eastern coast, where Aegon and his sisters first came ashore, and Aegon ordered the construction of a royal castle on its highest hill, the Red Keep.
Okay, so it was Aegon the Conqueror, aka the Mad King, from the Targaryens, who basically created King's Landing as we know it today, if you will. Like built the Red Keep, which is that castle there. Interesting. Okay. Because I don't know. I just
didn't think it was the same person.
Oh, okay. So Aegon the Conqueror is not the Mad King. The Mad King is Aerys. Oh my god, these names.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait.
Yeah, because I was like, wait, but I thought that they were there for much longer than just one Mad King.
Yeah.
Okay, backtrack. Sorry, forget that. So Aegon is the one that was able to invade and build everything, and then eventually Aerys is the one who became the Mad King.
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I'm understanding.
This is the blind leading the blind. No, but I think we're getting it.
Yeah.
Okay. Phew. Royal Castle on its highest hill.
For 300 years, the Targaryen dynasty stayed strong in the face of rebellion, civil war, and plague. But the line of Dragon Kings was broken when my father, Aerys Targaryen, the second of his name, was overthrown in rebellion. My father was betrayed and slaughtered by Ser Jaime Lannister, a member of his own Kingsguard. His son and heir, my brother Rhaegar, perished on the field of battle at the hands of Robert Baratheon, who claimed the Iron Throne for himself. And so today, the only surviving members of the storied Targaryen dynasty are myself, Prince Viserys, rightful King of the Andals and ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, and my sister, Daenerys. We were spirited away to the free cities of the East by loyalists. Here we have lived in exile ever since.
Okay, so that's why they ended up where they did, because there were loyalists that took them there to be exiled and, I guess, survive.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
It's all coming together.
Dreaming of a day when we will cross the narrow sea and take back my father's throne.
Robert's Rebellion by Robert Baratheon.
Okay.
Rebellion. The crimes of House Targaryen were too heinous to go unanswered. The noble houses of Baratheon, Stark, and Arryn united to oppose and overthrow the line of the cursed Dragon King. While Ned Stark and Arryn secured an alliance with the Tullys of Riverrun, I called the banners of Storm's End and rode out in force against the Mad King and his minions. Gods, those were some battles. Our first victory occurred at Summerhall, where I faced off against an army of dragon loyalists and won 3 battles in a single day. 3 in one day.
I miss him.
Hells, that was a glory.
What was that?
I miss him.
I know, this is like so like him,
Yeah.
like his style of storytelling.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
was like Robert
3 in one day.
always telling the stories of
Love
like,
that.
the battles that he was in and drinking and the people he slept with. Okay, let's continue.
Glorious day. We tried to take Ashford Castle in the Reach, but the Tyrrells beat us back. We had to regroup. My army was pursued north by Aerys' army and took refuge in the Stony Sept in the Riverlands. When the Targaryen army entered the town, the Sept bells tolled, a signal to the townspeople of the battle that was to come. As the Targaryens searched from house to house for me, the combined forces of Ned Stark and the Tullys swept into the city. Gods, what a day that was. It's now known as the Battle of the Bells. We overwhelmed the Mad King's forces and sent them scampering back to King's Landing. Aerys' son, Rhaegar, who started the whole damn thing, finally emerged from hiding in the south and assembled his own army to face us. As for the Mad King, he must have been pissing himself. The battle that would decide the fate of the Seven Kingdoms occurred at the crossing of the Green Fork of the Trident River. Rhaegar commanded the royal host, which was some 40,000 strong. My forces were outnumbered by nearly 5,000 men, but that didn't matter. They were fresh, but we were battle-hardened and had justice on our side. As the battle raged around us, I faced off with Rhaegar, the stag and the dragon right there in the ford of the river.
And this is what
Fury of 10 men.
Viserys, I think, when he said, oh, and he killed, or was it his brother, his uncle or something, was killed in the battle. Oh, and then he's like, I killed him, blah, blah, blah. I love hearing the different perspectives.
Yeah, right.
Raining blow after blow upon that vile prince before burying my warhammer in his chest.
Wow, so graphic.
So hard the ruby rubies on his armor broke free, flinging them into the stream. They call it the Ruby Ford now. With that scum Rhaegar dead and the royal army shattered, our next move was to make for King's Landing. But I'd sustained a few wounds in the battle and was unable to ride. I sent Ned Stark to the capital to face the Mad King and make him pay for his crimes.
Interesting, okay. And now Robert's Rebellion by Viserys.
The Targaryens, blood of the dragon and the last of old Valyria, were loved by their subject and admired far and wide as the greatest dynasty in the history of the Western world. But the peace and prosperity of nearly 3 centuries of Targaryen rule was shat by the usurper, Robert Baratheon, and his band of traitors. House Baratheon owed its very existence to the Targaryens. Was it not Aegon the Dragon himself who elevated the bastard Orys Baratheon in the War of Conquest? And what of the Starks, the Lannisters, the Aarons of the Vale? All had been spared and allowed to keep their lands when Aegon could easily have wiped them out. Centuries later, the usurper and his lackeys repaid Aegon's benevolence with treachery. There are some who dare to claim Robert and his allies had reason to rebel. They say the crown prince stole the usurper's lady love. They say my father, King Aerys, murdered Rickard Stark and his son without just cause. Whether these charges are true or not, it doesn't matter. The dragon answers to no one. Aerys' good name has been besmirched in the years since the rebellion. He's been called a dangerous madman, a monster, a tyrant that brought his tragic end upon himself. Lies! My father was a victim of weaklings in his council. Lackwits who failed him in his hour of need and let the rebellion spin out of control. But it was not enough. The royal army was crushed at the Battle of the Trident.
That's interesting because as he was talking through this, I was wondering, I wonder what his perspective on his own father was. Does he realize that his father was, like everyone else says, paranoid and kind of cruel for... just impulsively and all these things. And I wonder if he would say but my father was this, but he's like, no, lies.
He doesn't believe any of it.
But also Viserys, I feel like he probably wouldn't be that. Seemed like the genes were still alive. Because
he was a little mad himself.
It was there the valiant Rhaegar met Robert in single combat, but the gods betrayed him, and he perished by the usurper's hand. As the field of fire had marked the end of the Andal centuries before, the Battle of the Trident seemed to herald the end of the Dragon Kings. When word reached the capital of my brother Rhaegar's death, my father Aerys moved to protect me, as I was the surviving heir to the throne. He sent me to the island fortress of Dragonstone, along with my mother, Queen Rhaela, who was great with child. But as my father, my king, Aerys Targaryen, prepared to defend his throne to the bitter end, little did he know of the horrors and betrayals that awaited him and our family.
House Baratheon. I want to know more about them.
Ours is the fury. These are the words of the Black Stag of Baratheon. A battle cry echoed throughout the land in rebellion when I, Robert Baratheon, the first of his name, seized the Iron Throne from the Mad King Aerys Targaryen, ending a dynasty nearly 300 years old. House Baratheon was born in the Wars of Conquest, when Aegon the Dragon invaded Westeros. Aegon sent his commander, Orys Baratheon, to take Storm's End. Argilac the Arrogant, the last of the Storm Kings, foolishly left the safety of his stronghold and met the Baratheon warlord in open battle. Argilac was soundly defeated, and Orys took his lands, his holdings, and his daughter. Orys was said to be a half-brother to Aegon Targaryen. If this were true, a little blood of the dragon mingled with that of the stag in those days. The seat of House Baratheon is Storm's End, a legendary keep raised in the Age of Heroes. It overlooks Shipbreaker's Bay, where legend has it that Durin, the first Storm King, raised the keep with the aid of Bran the Builder of House Stark, forging a centuries-long connection with the Stormlands and the North. After Aegon's conquest of the Seven Kingdoms, the Baratheon...
That's interesting, and they said Bran the Builder, right?
Yep.
Bran the Builder, they said, was involved in the building of the wall. So they're all kind of it makes sense that the alliance and just continued
right.
Yeah, and the respect for the wall and all those things. Conquest, okay.
Baratheons remained loyal enough to the crown while Targaryen kings came and went, but loyalty has its limits. When Rhaegar Targaryen, Aerys's vile son and heir, abducted Lyanna Stark, my betrothed, my beloved, it was time to act. We raised our banners, Baratheon, Stark, Jon Arryn and the Tullys, united in rebellion against Rhaegar and his father, the Mad King. We were victorious and took the Iron Throne. That bit of dragon blood in my veins came in well, as it made me a distant relation to the Targaryen dynasty blood of my long-lost ancestor, Orys. The truth of it is, I took it. I sit on the Iron Throne. I rule the Seven Kingdoms from the Red Keep.
I mean, you know, I always talk about, I think we always talk about how, like, oh my gosh, here he goes telling his war stories again.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a big deal that, like, he was able to take over after 300 years that this family had been at the throne.
Right.
So,
and
I mean,
he went through a lot of battles and a lot of...
Yeah, to get there.
Yeah.
So it definitely took bravery and courage and everything. So, I mean, I would probably be telling these stories nonstop, too.
Right.
If I was him. So, yeah, there's that. The Sack of King's Landing by Maester. I can't never repeat these things. Lewin.
Yeah.
Robert Baratheon's victory at the Trident was a turning point in the war for the Iron Throne. While it was clear the gods were smiling on the rebel forces, Aerys Targaryen still held the Red Keep at King's Landing. As Robert was wounded and unable to ride, it was up to Eddard Stark to make for the capital and force the Mad King to give up the throne. Lord Stark reached the city gates to find that Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, had already sacked the city in Robert's name. House Lannister had remained neutral up to this point, ignoring requests for help from both the Crown and the rebel. Now that Robert's eventual victory was assured, it seemed Lord Tywin had finally chosen a side. Lord Eddard was horrified by what he saw when he entered the city. Homes looted and burned, women raped, scores of innocent citizens killed. Disgusted, he led his force up Visenya's hill to the Red Keep. Upon entering the throne room, he found King Aerys lying in a pool of blood, dead by the hand of his own sworn King's Guard, Jaime Lannister, who sat brazenly upon the throne, demanding to know the whereabouts of Queen Rhaela. Lord Eddard was informed the Queen and her son Viserys had been spirited away to Dragonstone before the Lannisters arrived, but other members of the royal family were not as fortunate. Elia, Martell of Dorne, who was the wife of Prince Rhaegar, had been raped and murdered by Ser Grigor Clegane on Lord Tywin's orders. Ser Grigor and his man had also butchered Rhaegar's young children. When Robert...
Isn't that one of the guys that participates in those matches? No, in those matches.
Oh.
Sir, what is it? Grigor, something like that? Okay, interesting. I'm going to go back a second.
Okay.
Raped and murdered by Ser Grigor Clegane on Lord Tywin's orders. Ser Grigor and his man had also butchered Rhaegar's young children. When Robert was well enough to reach the capital, Lord Eddard demanded the Lannisters answer for their heinous crimes. Robert refused and sent him south to relieve the Baratheon stronghold of Storm's End, which was still under siege by forces loyal to the crown. Whatever words passed between the two old friends are known only to them. But Lord Eddard is said to have left King's Landing in anger. Later, when Robert was crowned, he appointed Jon Arryn as Hand of the King. Lord Arryn's first order of business was to broker a truce with the Martells of Dorne, who were outraged by the brutal murder of Princess Elia and her children. Following the death of Lyanna Stark, who had been betrothed to Robert, houses Baratheon and Lannister were joined in marriage when the new king took Tywin Lannister's eldest daughter Cersei as his queen.
So Cersei was supposed to marry somebody from the Targaryens, and then when that whole thing, they had a fallout and everything went the way it did, then they married her to the new king.
Right.
But it also seems that Ned left here. Yeah.
But wait, Cersei was supposed to marry the Targaryens, but then the Mad King said no because he was going mad. And, yes.
And so then they still ended up being very strategic and married her to this king.
Right.
But I was going to say, they mentioned something that Ned Stark left King's Landing, like, not on the greatest of terms with Robert.
Right.
Which could explain, I don't know if there's more to it, but I know that, like, in the beginning when they saw each other in that first episode, where there seemed to be like a little bit of, I don't know, tension is too much, going
Yeah,
too far, but
yeah.
like a level beneath tension, whatever
Yeah.
that is, like just a little bit of like awkwardness
Yeah.
between them. And then they like kind of rekindled their friendship
Yeah.
and they kind of were able to pick things back up where they had left off at some point.
You could
but
tell that something had
there was like a division.
There was, yeah, but at the same time they were like friends, and then they like
and like brothers almost.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Because I guess Robert was more like lenient with what the Lannisters had done than Ned was.
Right.
As for Eddard Stark, he returned to his stronghold of Winterfell, forever haunted by his sister's death and the shameful way that Robert had secured his throne.
The sack of King's Landing is told by Robert.
For our rebellion to succeed, King's Landing had to be taken forcefully. No one was foolish enough to believe that Aerys was going to hand his crown over peacefully. The Mad King's reign needed to end. What Tywin Lannister's forces did was unfortunate, but it was necessary to secure the Iron Throne and bring peace and justice to the Seven Kingdoms. My glorious victory at the Trident left me wounded, but I sent my personal maester to attend to Sir Barristan Selmy instead. His wounds were more severe. Even though Sir Barristan was a member of Aerys's Kingsguard and fought on the opposing side, that man's bravery and loyalty was something to behold. But this meant my wounds would take longer to heal, and I couldn't ride to King's Landing myself. I sent the one man I trusted over anyone else in this world, Ned Stark, in my place. Had I been able to ride, perhaps I could have reached King's Landing sooner and prevented some of the violence that occurred when the Lannisters entered the city. Still, what Lord Tywin did was for the greater good. Even what happened to Princess Elia and her children, babies or no, theirs was the same cursed blood that flowed within the Mad King's veins.
So, I mean, they just have like some differences with how they like their worldview or whatever,
Right.
because remember how like even I guess later in season 1, Robert was all about like, oh, that Daenerys, whatever, she's like over there starting a family or something. She needs to be killed.
Yeah.
And Ned Stark's like honorable, like,
Yeah. And he was like, no,
yeah.
leave her alone.
Yeah. He like tries to choose like the non-violent.
Yeah.
path
But
if he can.
Robert, isn't that way.
Yeah, it's like, he's
He's
like
like, kill these people, even though, you know, they're
he's
just
more ruthless.
Yeah.
For like the greater good.
Right.
But he's more ruthless. But like Ned Stark seemed to be someone that even if it was for the greater good, like he would avoid situations like that. So
I feel like the way he's telling this story is that Ned didn't do all that he could have done.
Right. Exactly.
If he would have not been wounded.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
Like he almost sees it like a weakness.
Yeah.
In Ned.
They were dragon spawn and couldn't be allowed to survive. What would they grow to be? Loyal subjects. Ned with his damn northern honor. He and I had our first major fight over the deaths of the Targaryen children. Ned called it murder. Murder? It was war. It was war. Lord Stark demanded that the Lannisters be held responsible for their crimes. Was it a crime to put an end to a family of lunatics born of incest? I wouldn't and still won't blame Tywin. Instead, I sent Ned Stark south to finish off the remaining Targaryen loyalists. It was only Lyanna Stark's death that reconciled us. Ned had lost his sister. I had lost my betrothed and beloved. We shared that sad bond together, Ned and I. Through it, our friendship was made strong again. As for the Mad King's surviving heirs, those that were able to scurry away in the face of my fury now live somewhere across the narrow sea. They had best stay there. If they ever set foot in Westeros again, they will face the King's justice.
Okay. And now, point of view of Tywin Lannister. Let's see what he has to say for
Aegon
himself.
Targaryen lay dead on the banks of the Trident, his royal army shattered and in retreat. The days of the Dragon Kings were clearly numbered. Until that moment, it would have been foolish to commit Casterly Rock to either the Crown or the Rebellion. What would our family have to gain in supporting a raving madman, or in entering a crusade to put Robert Baratheon on the Iron Throne? But chaos benefits no one. It was time for House Lannister to do what it could to ensure a return of peace and prosperity to the land. I, Tywin Lannister, brought 10,000 Lannister troops to the gates of King's Landing in order to bring the bloodshed to a quick and decisive conclusion. King Aerys had been sending ravens for months, begging for my support to end the uprising. In a way, his pleas had been answered. As I had suspected, Aerys opened the city gates and welcomed my men. Our plan was clear: crush Aerys' remaining bannermen and remove the remnants of the royal family as quickly and efficiently as possible. Any alternative meant years of further war and a fragmented 7 kingdoms.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Our means were blood, but the results speak for themselves. As for Aerys, it is true he met his fate at the hands of my son. Aerys had kept Jaime close during the rebellion, thinking himself clever in keeping my son as a hostage should I decide to pledge support to the rebel cause. This proved to be his greatest mistake. For when the time came, Jaime did his duty as a Lannister and drove his sword into the Mad King's back. With that, Robert Baratheon's crown was secured. The new king recognized our role in his ascension to the throne, just as he recognized how useful the might and riches of Casterly Rock would be if he wanted to keep it. To that end, I offered my daughter Cersei as his queen. Had Aerys not spurned this same offer years earlier, perhaps things would have worked out differently.
And so that's also true that, like, it was mutually beneficial. Like, it was,
right.
You know, yes, of course, the Lannisters benefit from having someone in their family marry the king.
Exactly.
But Robert also benefits from the riches of Lannisters. But also, I think that, like, Robert being more, I don't know if the right word is forgiving, but, like, kind of letting things kind of not being as critical of what they did. I think it's not just like an honor thing, but also like if he became critical of them, like what would have happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not like he could have easily ascended to,
exactly.
Like if they were able
he had
to do
be that way to be the king and be successful.
Yeah, because otherwise, like, just the way that what they did at King's Landing, like, they could just do to him.
Right.
And,
Right.
So he needed them as an ally.
Exactly.
So can't blame him, I guess. But yeah. Yes, so let's see, things would have worked out.
With Robert and Cersei crowned as king and queen of the 7 kingdoms, it was a new day. The dragon was vanquished, and the 7 kingdoms would thereafter belong to the stag and the lion.
The sack of King's Landing by Viserys Targaryen.
The Battle of the Trident may have been an important victory for the usurper, but it was the treachery and barbarism of Tywin Lannister that sealed the fate of the Targaryen dynasty. My father, King Aerys, had ever been a friend to the Lions of the Rock. Aerys graciously brought Tywin to court, making him the youngest hand of the king in history. He gave him power. He gave him respect. He made it possible for Tywin to restore House Lannister to glory. Aerys and Tywin governed side by side for 20 prosperous years. Still, when the usurper called his banners in rebellion, Tywin Lannister ignored his king's pleas for help and stayed holed up in his stronghold of Casterly Rock. In time, my brother, Prince Rhaegar, was dead. The realm was in turmoil, and the usurper's forces were said to be riding for King's Landing. What a glorious sight it must have been when a force of 10,000 Lannister men showed up at the gate of the capital with Lord Tywin at their head, pledging support to his beleaguered king. Aerys opened the gates for his old friend.
So they showed up acting like they were supporting him.
Wow.
And then they just tricked him. It was like, okay, yeah, thank you, amazing.
Yeah, come. Yeah, you're
more the merrier.
Instead, Lannister and his men proceeded to plunder and destroy the city that he had called home for decades. As the capital was ravaged and its people terrorized, Jaime Lannister, son of Lord Tywin, proved every bit as treacherous. He killed my father, the king, at the foot of the Iron Throne. The Lannisters entered the Red Keep and Tywin ordered the deaths of the rest of the royal family. It is said Princess Rhaenys was found cowering under her father's bed and put to the sword. She was only a child. As for Rhaegar's widow, Elia, she was forced to watch as Lannister thugs dashed her baby son's head against a wall before being raped and murdered herself. As I was the heir to my father's throne, I had been spirited away to Dragonstone with my mother, Queen Rhaela, who was with child. As a raging summer storm battered the island fortress and destroyed the Targaryen fleet as it lay at anchor, My sister, Daenerys, was born. My mother, the queen, died giving birth. Now, some 17 years later, the rightful king still lives in exile. But a day of reckoning is coming. I will sail west as Aegon the Dragon did centuries before. I will take back my father's throne with blood and fire, and I will punish the treacherous dogs who sought to destroy my family, and the people shall rejoice.
And the people shall rejoice. Okay. House Aaron.
In the snow-capped mountains of the moon.
That's where her sister, or she's from.
Well, John Aaron, her sister's husband.
Yeah.
But I don't know. She's from Tully.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right.
The Tullys, right?
But this is where her sister lived.
Well, who she married into.
She married, yeah.
In the snow-capped mountains of the moon, standing high above the rich lands of the Vale, stands the Eyrie. A storied and impregnable fortress said to have been built by the legendary Mountain Kings in the Age of Heroes. It is the stronghold of House Aaron, one of the oldest noble families in Westeros. Their sigil, a soaring falcon over a crescent moon. Their words, as high as honor. The Aarons are direct descendants of the Andal invaders, who sailed across the narrow sea and came ashore at the Fingers. According to legend, Sir Artus Aaron, known as the Winged Knight, soared through the sky atop a giant falcon, landing on the peak of the highest mountain, where he defeated the Griffin King in battle. It was the Andal's first great victory over the First Men, and Sir Artus was duly rewarded. He was declared King of the Mountain and the Vale, and the region was renamed the Vale of Aaron. Thousands of years later, Aegon the Conqueror arrived in Westeros. House Aaron bent the knee to Aegon and his dragons, and were allowed to maintain the control of the region, as Lords Paramount of the Vale and Wardens of the East. Over the centuries, House Aaron remained loyal to the Targaryen dynasty, until Lord Jon Arryn joined with houses Baratheon and Stark in rebellion against Mad King Aerys. Upon winning the Iron Throne, Robert named Lord Jon Hand of the King, a position he held until his mysterious death.
Okay. House Lannister by Tywin Lannister.
On the far western coast of the continent, high atop a rocky promontory overlooking the Sunset Sea, sits Casterly Rock, ancestral seat of House Lannister. Below it lies Lannisport, one of the great cities of Westeros, a center for trade, culture, and the great Lannister fleet. There are a number of gold and silver mines in the Westerlands, making it the richest region in all of Westeros. One of the most productive mines lies beneath Casterly Rock itself, making House Lannister the wealthiest of all the noble houses. This allows House Lannister to finance many endeavors of other noble houses. Even the king himself has sought credit from Casterly Rock from time to time. We Lannisters claim our descent from the Andal invaders, and through the female bloodline, Lann the Clever. According to the legend, Lann, using only his wits, won Casterly Rock from the noble House of Casterly during the Age of Heroes. The Lannisters reigned as kings of the Rock for thousands of years, and worked to make it the envy of the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. Our time as kings ended, however, when Aegon Targaryen, otherwise known as Aegon the Conqueror, arrived in Westeros with his army. The last king of the Rock, King Loren Lannister, joined forces with King Mern Gardener, the king of the Reach. Together, with 60,000 men, they met the Targaryen host in open battle.
And these were the ones that had a lot of casualties.
Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons, slaughtering 4,000 men at what came to be known as the Field of Fire. King Mern himself was burned alive that day, and House Gardener turned to ash with him. Seeing both the threat and opportunity the Targaryens represented, Loren wisely surrendered and aided Aegon in his further conquest of Westeros. The Lannisters were thus appointed Lords Paramount of the Westerlands and Wardens of the West, titles we hold to this day. Let us be clear, though, it is neither luck nor royal favor that makes our house prosperous. There have been times in our history where some have thought us weak, lazy, or opulent. My father, Titus Lannister, nearly bankrupted our house with his poor investments and allowed himself to be mocked openly at court. When our vassal, the Rains of Castamere, dared to rise up against the Lannisters, they learned how dangerous it can be to taunt a lie. I, Tywin Lannister, led the assault on Castamere to put down this rebellion. I made an example of them, to anyone who doubts our might. They even made a quaint song about the fates of the Rains of Castamere. Sadly, there are no Rains left to hear it. Today, the Golden Lion of Lannister is rightly admired and feared throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Our words are, hear me roar.
Okay.
But there are other words that should be remembered when crossing a Lion of Casterly Rock. A Lannister always pays his debts.
Yep.
House Stark. All of these families had like huge shifts during the Age of Heroes. And then again during the Field of Fire. I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
They all were affected a little bit differently, but yeah.
Affected in some way.
The Starks of Winterfell trace their descent to the first men in the Age of Heroes. The family's founder was Brandon the Builder, who, in the aftermath of the Long Night, helped establish the Night's Watch. Legend has it he enlisted the aid of giants and the powerful magic of the Children of the Forest to raise the mighty wall, which has protected the realm for generations. He went on to build the ancestral seat of Winterfell and reigned as the first king in the north.
The Starks reigned as kings for thousands of years, even withstanding the invasion of the Andals. As the southern kingdoms fell and the Children of the Forest were driven away, the north stood strong, maintaining its religious customs and its way of life. Eventually, the reign of the Kings of Winter came to an end with the coming of Aegon the Conqueror. After Aegon and his dragons destroyed the combined armies of the Reach and the Rock at the Field of Fire, King Torrhen Stark bent the knee and swore fealty to the Targaryen dynasty in order to spare the destruction of Winterfell and his people. He was forever after known as the King Who Knelt. As a reward for his submission, Aegon named Torrhen Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North.
The Starks take great pride in their history and traditions. It is one of the few noble houses that still keeps the old gods. A sacred weirwood tree looms large in Winterfell's Godswood. Its ancestral sword, Ice, was forged in ancient Valyria and has been passed down through the generations. House Stark remains steadfast in its support of the Night's Watch, even as the once illustrious order has fallen on hard times. Much like their sigil, the Grey Direwolf, House Stark is the stuff of legend in the north and throughout the Seven Kingdoms, and their family words, "Winter is coming,"
serve as a reminder of their beginnings in the wake of the long night and a grim portent of things to come.
That was really interesting.
I love that.
What did you think?
Well, it just kind of really puts, you get the perspective of every every family, how everything occurred in their eyes, and it just makes a lot of things make sense, just putting things together. So much happened before we started watching.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, okay. Now you just get the dynamic of how the relationships are with one another, why they're that way.
Yeah.
And this is super interesting and very informative.
Very informative. And I also I'm reminded of how how much depth there is to this story.
Yeah, totally.
It's not just what we see. There's so much more to it. So much, history. That's what this video is about, but it's so much history of how one thing led to another and all the different, even from the beginning, it's they're telling again the sort of their Adam and Eve, how the first people were here and there, and then how they began to worship these gods versus those gods, and just so much,
and everything has an explanation of why it was that way and why the North were this, and and the South believed in this, and it just makes sense when you see them interact, and how the Lannisters don't believe anything that the Northern talk about.
Right. Yeah, because they would make fun of Tyrion when he came back from the wall,
made so much fun.
They made fun like, oh, you were over there, like,
with the magic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like it just, all of this, like you see it in like the everyday conversations, like the smallest details.
Yeah.
And like exactly what you said, like how they interact, like it's a result of everything
exactly
in the past, of not just the people that we're seeing, but like their families,
right,
and their history.
I'm wondering if we should watch
season 1 again.
Yeah. No, but like the second season history before the second season. Well, I know it's not. It wasn't.
Is that how you're supposed to watch this after the season? Is that right? Can you guys let us know? Like, did we do this right? Watching it after, like watching the season 1 history and lore video after the first season. Like, should we then also watch the second one after the second season, or like that's how? Let us know how we're supposed to watch these.
Yeah.
Because I'm curious.
I'm just thinking, I feel like now that we have seen the first season, we kind of now understand how it's, how all the different just like the storyline. I feel that seeing the second season's history beforehand might not be as confusing, just because now we have an idea of this world and how it started. But yeah, let us know, because maybe we should just wait until the end and I don't know.
See it there then.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like, I do think that, because we weren't sure, like, I'm like, I wonder if watching this will help us understand season 2. And you mentioned this, somebody else mentioned this too, that hasn't seen these videos. They were like, but how would the season 1 history and lore help you understand season 2?
Yeah.
But I think it does, because
it does.
Even like in season 2, there's a lot of talk about like religion and gods and different beliefs, and like, why do you believe this and why do you believe that? And you guys are going to see when you watch those 2 reactions, like at least the next one or I don't remember. I'm very confused in those ones. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, who are these? Like, who are these gods that they keep talking about? Like, I was so confused, and I feel like understanding like their religions in this video, I think really is going to help me with putting pieces together.
100%
in those like scenes and all of that. But this is really interesting. That's so cool, like how they made this too, with like the drawings and the characters telling the story,
and like you already know the characters, so if you feel more of like what they like, how they're saying it. You get this. It was really cool.
That's so true. Like, we wouldn't have appreciated that if we had seen this before, because like hearing Robert Baratheon like telling the story from his point of view, you're like, yep, that's him. I was like, I miss him.
I know,
because like that's exactly how, like, that's the type of like perspective he would have. That makes total sense.
Exactly.
Same thing when like you hear the perspective of, what was Daenerys' brother, Viserys. Same thing. And also, that was interesting how they would tell like the same story.
I love
from different points of view. Me too. Like at first, I think what happened when they were talking about the history of the Night's Watch.
For a second, I'm like, are we watching the right thing?
Yeah, I'm like, wait.
I was like, oh my god,
did we like hit fast rewind?
Yeah,
Why
we're
are
like,
we
wait,
watching this
what
again? Why are we hearing the same story? But it sounds a little different this time.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's someone else's perspective.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I loved how they did that, because everything is a matter of perspective.
Yeah,
everything. Like whether something's good or something's bad, it depends on who you ask.
Exactly.
It was so interesting.
It was super interesting. I loved it.
Added like just like hearing the different sides of the story too. Like it might be easy to jump to a conclusion of like, this is the objectively wrong thing to do. Like, even when when they told the story of how the Lannisters sacked King's Landing. And we were like, oh, well, Ned Stark is very honorable. He did the honorable thing. Okay, let's move on. But then
it kind of makes sense. Like, when you hear from the other side, you're like, oh, well, yeah. I mean,
you can see like
I can see why you did that.
Yeah, perspective is everything.
It's so cool. And now I really understand this whole Mad King, because I was very confused about his story and what happened, and Jaime, and everybody calling him because he stabbed stabbed him in the back. But now it like makes sense. Now it's all like,
it does, because before I feel like we would also hear fragments of stories.
Yeah.
And whenever anybody would talk about the past, they would talk about it in a way that it was like they were talking to someone that knows what they were talking about. They were talking to them as if they were telling the story to the viewer.
Yeah,
because sometimes I see that like in movies or in TV shows where like you're like, I'll be confused about something, and then somebody will talk to another character about like the thing that's happening, but they'll like over explain. And as I'm watching, I'm like, oh, that was for me, thank you. But like here they don't do that.
Yeah.
Like the characters just like talk to each other, like they're talking to each other, not like they're trying to explain things to me.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, seeing it here was super helpful.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved this. I'm definitely want to continue watching the ones for the other seasons.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for recommending that. That was a really, really great recommendation. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, that was awesome. Especially because you guys saw how confused I've been in all of these episodes. So thank you. And yeah, I think that's about it. I think we should probably wrap it up, but we'll continue watching season 2. And then in about a week or so, you guys should see the first episode of season 2. I mean, we haven't gotten that far. I think we only watched the 2 episodes, right? Because we couldn't help and kind of binge a little bit after we saw the finale for the first season. But yeah, we'll now pick things back up in our order with episode 3 and be a little bit less confused, I hope. And yeah, thank you so much for watching this with us.
Thank you.
I hope that you'll continue watching season 2 with us as well. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we would love it if you subscribed. It makes our day and it really, really helps us out so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Bye.